Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience of your day. My name is Ghoulish Gabe.
And I'm Juffy the Vampire Slayer.
And we're going to answer your spooky questions today. But first, I have a question for you, Juffy the Vampire Slayer.
What is the question?
How are you doing today, Jeff?
Oh, I'm doing fine. How about yourself, Gabe?
I'm doing pretty good. It's October. You know, we're recording this a ways before Halloween, of course, but I'm excited because it's Halloween. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite holidays. I go back and forth between October between Halloween and Thanksgiving.
Right. Yeah. It's,
they're both so good.
Candy and food, Yeah. Which I guess you could say candy is a food, but it's not a food.
No, they're two different things.
But
I never used to like Thanksgiving when I was a kid. But now that I'm an adult and I can actually make food that is good, because my parents were notorious for not knowing what seasonings were. Now that I make the food myself, I'm able to make it good, and I also enjoy having people over. Well, I mean, I guess I'm probably not going to be able to have people over this year, but I enjoy having, spending time with family and such. So, So anyway, but this isn't the Thanksgiving episode. This is a Halloween episode, as evidenced by the scream that was definitely at the beginning of the episode. That I've had several people complain about, but it's not going away.
Can't get rid of it. Can't do it.
Yeah.
But no, it's not Thanksgiving. It's Halloween. Ooh.
Yes, Halloween. So I'm very, very excited about Halloween. We're probably just gonna, sit around and watch horror movies and such. I think we are gonna get some like king size candy bars or something just in case anybody does come by.
Right.
We can use like a long distance grabber to hand to them or whatever.
Get one with like a little scary hand on the end of it or something.
Sure.
Yeah. Something spooky related I want to bring up. Shameless self promotion. I started streaming on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/tiltedturtle. Turtle like spelled like the race in D&D, but legally not the same thing, I hope.
Okay.
So there's a game I've been playing.
Yes.
And I was streaming it the other day, called Phasmaphobia.
Yeah, I've heard that you were streaming this, but I don't know anything about it. What is it?
It is, so imagine those cheesy kind of reality, super produced shows where it's like ghost hunters go into a haunted whatever, and they have a bunch of like supposedly fancy equipment and like high powered microphones and cameras, and they set up different cameras and like look for, like they do like night vision, and like they'll have some guy who's just like way too ripped to be doing anything involving ghosts to like, he's like, ghost, reveal yourself to us. And then they just kind of wander around, and then like something makes a noise and they go, oh, did you hear that? Did you hear that?
Right. Or no, Jeff, nothing made a noise. They just said, whoa, did you hear that?
Exactly. Like nothing happens, and then they go, whoa, did you feel that?
Right.
So it is kind of like that premise, but like it's a video game. So you're actually dealing with real ghosts and stuff.
Yeah.
So like you're up to a team of 4 people who are like in this, like you start off in the back of this truck with all this like ghost finding equipment and stuff. Like you're kind of like the interns of Ghostbusters. Like they send in the interns to go and see if this is actually a ghost situation. And then you report your findings, and then it's not part of the game, but it is sort of like part of the story that another crew comes in and removes the ghost.
Sure.
It is made by one developer. It is very buggy, but it's very impressive, and like it got really popular, and so the expectation is nothing new will ever come from it, because when one developer makes a good game it is very popular, it just disappears. Sure. It's just a sad state of some things, but it's very creepy. It's a lot of fun because like you have to find out what type of ghost there is because there's like, I don't know, half a dozen or so different kind of ghosts. And like there's a bunch of different there's a bunch of different evidence that you can collect, and depending on like which 3 pieces of evidence you find, that's the type of ghost it is.
Ooh, okay.
And then once you know what kind of ghost it is, you know, you have like a manual that tells you it's like its personality, like, or like, you know, the kind of things that this kind of ghost can do. So like a demon is very aggressive, but is more affected by a crucifix. So like if you brought along a crucifix, then you'll be more protected by the demon. But if you didn't bring a crucifix and it is a demon, it's going to be very aggressive and it's going to hunt you down and kill you. Like,
sure.
So, and then like there's a lot of little like side objectives you have to do. Like one of them is like successfully use a crucifix, or it'll be like, take a picture of the ghost, which can be sometimes like, depending on the ghost, can be harder than because like a spirit or a shade might not show itself as easily as say an Oni would, you know, or, you know.
Sure. Oh, of course. Everybody knows that.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting game. Playing it alone is terrifying. Playing it with friends can still be terrifying, but then you're also like playing tricks on each other and having a fun time. Like you're flicking the lights when somebody else is in the room and it's like, oh God, what is that? And it's like, it's just me.
Okay. Well, cool. I hope there'll be a chance where I can check this. I can either watch you play it or possibly get it and play it with you at some point.
Yeah. It's I think it's only like $14-15 on Steam right now. Because it's early access and it's a single developer, so who knows if anything else more will come from it. But even in its current state, it's a fun time. Okay. But yeah, I streamed it for a bit the other day, and so it should be still up on my Twitch VOD list. So if anybody wants to check me out playing that,
sure.
It's
Oh, cool.
So, and you know, because it's the spooky season, I'm pretty sure I'll be playing that a good deal more. So
yeah, that's awesome. I would love to get back into Dead by Daylight, but I know how much of time sink it was for me, so I don't see myself. I don't see myself letting myself do that anytime soon.
Yeah. I do still play that from time to time. So if you ever want to jump into it, you don't have to commit to doing it all the time, but
sure,
you know, if you want to play that at some point, we can do that.
Okay. Just a couple other things. We finished out our Dawn of Worlds game last week, after recording last episode, and it went really well. I think the energy was a bit lower than the first time because there were fewer people. Okay. Like you weren't able to make it, Dustin wasn't able to make it. Yeah. But we still had a good time, and we've got it. We kind of finished out at a good point to start a campaign in it. So now I have the difficult process of, turning it into a campaign and figuring out what to actually do with the players and such. So I'm excited to see what we're able to do with it, but it is going to be a lot of work to get all that together.
Right. Yeah.
And then listeners, here's a little cool bonus thing for you. On Halloween, we are going to be putting out one of our Patreon bonus episodes from last year, the one that we did last October. We did an actual play using the Terrible RPG. We did an actual play of a game that I ran that was loosely based on the horror movie Ghost Ship. I think that's one of the more fun things that we've put out on the Patreon. I've listened to it several times, and I plan on putting that out on the main feed on Halloween Day. So it's not going to take the place of a normal episode. It's going to be in addition to normal episodes, but check that out. Give it a listen, and hopefully you guys have fun with it. Because I think it was really fun. I wish we could do the Terrible RPG again this year, but because we're limited to playing remotely, it doesn't quite work that way.
Right? Yeah, it's more fun when you can see the person tearing the pages and stuff like that.
Yeah, in theory, I could have been like, okay, now hold up the thing you tore, hold it up to the sheet of paper, but no, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, there's other systems we can try out. It's fine.
Yeah. So for our Patreon game this month, for our patrons, we're going to be using a different system, but we're still going to do a game and release it on the Patreon feed. So
cool.
So yeah, everybody stay tuned for that. Hopefully it turns out really well. All right, you want to go ahead and get into this episode?
Yeah, sounds good.
It's probably going to be a long one because we've already I've already gone quite a bit over our usual intro time, I guess. Okay, so Jeff, I want you to imagine that you heard that there's this super cool party going on somewhere in town.
Okay.
And you know that it's invite only. But the way that you get an invite, you were sent a website. So you go to this website. It's like supercoolscaryparty.com or something. And on your computer screen comes up this Flash-based game that you have to play. You have to like solve this puzzle. You have to like look for clues and such. So give me an intelligence check and see how well you can figure out this puzzle.
Okay. A lucky number 7.
That's not very high. Okay, you don't get to go. Sorry, Jeff.
Oh, dang it.
All right, that's the episode, everybody.
How about you?
No, okay, so it takes you some time. You mess around with the website for a while, and you eventually end up back where you started. So give me another check. This time at a -1.
Okay. $12.
Okay. With a 12, you get a little bit further into it. You don't quite solve it. You eventually get to some kind of a you lose screen or whatever. But you picked up some other clues that you think might help you the next time around. So now make another check with a +2.
Yeah, I keep putting the dice back.
Yeah, don't put the dice back. Not until the segment's done, Jeff.
All right, what was my bonus?
+2.
I got a 15.
Okay. So you've been sitting there for hours. You've got like sweat streaming down your face, and you're clicking on all these things. You're clicking on doors. You're clicking on keys. You're clicking on windows and such. And then just when you think you're about to give up because there's no way that this party could possibly be worth all of this trouble, you click on this. There's like a box that shows up on the screen. You click on it, and then it opens up, and the screen changes to an invitation.
Ooh.
And it says, whoever holds this invitation is invited to tonight's party at the Dragon's Hoard. So today's magic item was submitted by me, actually. I had an idea for something that I wanted to do for this one, and I wasn't able to find a good version of it online, so I kind of had to make it myself. So today's magic item is the Lament Configuration. So I mentioned last week that I've been watching horror movies every day this month, and I'm currently going through the Hellraiser series, and I'm most of the way through it. Most of them have actually been pretty good. Some of them have been really bad, but most of them have been pretty good. And for anybody who's not familiar, the series sort of revolves around this puzzle box that eventually got named the Lament Configuration. And I wanted to bring that in because I thought it could be an interesting thing to talk about on the show. However, like I said, there wasn't really a good version of it online, at least not one that wasn't like less than, I don't know, like 30 paragraphs or something. So I kind of had to just make it myself. This is largely flavor. There's a little bit of mechanics, but it's kind of how I interpret the Lament Configuration from the Hellraiser series. So, crafted by a tinkerer and toy maker with connections to the occult, this puzzle box, known as the Lament Configuration, or Box of Sorrows, is an arcane device capable of serving as a doorway to the beyond. Although no seams or means of ingress are visible on the box, anyone who tinkers with the box long enough will begin to feel the movements of the components within. But beware, for opening the Lament Configuration even unintentionally carries with it a grievous risk. A living or sentient being may attempt a DC 15 intelligence check to open the puzzle box as an action. If they fail, they may attempt the check again after 1 minute of use, at a DC 14. As long as they continue to attempt to open the box, the DC reduces by 1 each minute until either the user succeeds or until 10 minutes have passed, at which point the box opens on its own. Upon opening, the lament configuration summons a group of extraplanar beings of a monastic order connected to that particular box. Depending on the user's intentions, these beings, referred to in texts as Cenobites, may be friendly or hostile, but they will always expect some form of payment, and those associated with the lament configuration trade not in coin, but in pain and pleasure. Once the Cenobites have been summoned by the lament configuration, they are free to do as they choose. A person may use the box to send them back whence they came. However, to do so requires opening the box, which follows the same rules as above. A creature holding the open box can spend an action to force a Cenobite within 30 feet back to their home plane with no save. After 1 minute of being open, the box closes and must be opened again to use its abilities. Once sent back to their home plane, the Cenobites may not return through the lament configuration until it is opened once more, but they are free to use other magical means of travel if they wish. If their interaction with the owner of the box was not ended peacefully, they are known to hold grudges. So, like I said, not really much in the way of mechanics. It is basically just kind of a box that summons these particular beings to you. However, you know, in the series of movies, it does various things. It's not always exactly as I wrote it here, but you know, sometimes it does this, sometimes it does that. At one point, somebody turns the box into a knife and stabs someone with it. So
okay,
who even knows? But I don't know. The thing that I liked about the series, especially at first, is that it just kind of like it's a box that this guy seeks out because he's kind of done all of the earthly pleasures. He knows all sorts of like pleasures and such the world has to offer him. And so he starts seeking like anything beyond that. And so he ends up summoning these creatures that basically tear him apart.
Ooh. But
in doing so, like it's like, you know, sadism and masochism and all that. He did it because he was the type of person that would derive pleasure from having his flesh torn and so on. I just don't think he realized it was going to go quite as far as it did.
Okay.
And so I'm intrigued by the idea of this group of the word Cenobite just means like member of a monastic order. However, because that's what these demons or whatever are referred to in the series, that's what people associate that word with.
Okay.
The Cenobites themselves, I liked how, again, in the first movie, they aren't really portrayed as being evil. A lot of the later movies did make them basically just demons. But it's not that they're evil, it's just that like they have interests and goals that are so alien to a living human that it seems like, you know, they would seem like evil if you were to interact with them.
Yeah.
And so on. So like in the first movie, there's a quote like, some people call us demons, some people call us angels. And that's such an intriguing concept.
Yeah. And I'm looking like the only one I'm visually familiar with is the Pinhead guy, right?
Yeah.
And like I just looked up Cenobites and like there are just like a bunch of different ones and it's like I can kind of like picture this. So yeah, this is just I guess like a race of beings that could just like have their own just aliens, like this society that is just so alien to us that they could be seen as this great evil or this I don't know, this powerful force of some kind. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, some of the movies do basically just make them these mustache twirling villains that just kill everybody. Mm-hmm. But I prefer the ones where some of the humans are the villains and the Cenobites are just kind of there as a means to an end.
Right.
You know, so this sort of thing, if you were to put it into a campaign, it's kind of like the DM can put this in there. Maybe a player doesn't know what it is. They fiddle around with it. They realize, oh, you know, the longer I do this, the easier it gets. And then eventually it opens on its own or whatever. And then the DM can put in some sort of like a deal with the devil, essentially. You can summon them. If you give them your end of the deal, they will give you some sort of, you know, ability or pleasures or something beyond comprehension. but it's risky. You might not know what you're getting yourself into, and then you've got a long-term long-term villain that will show up throughout the campaign.
Yeah.
So, So I just thought it'd be fun to bring in something like this. I was hoping somebody would just like have like a one paragraph. Oh yeah, here's the lament configuration in D&D, but I didn't really find that, so I kind of had to make it myself. So
yeah, especially like long running series of movies and stuff like that, where like the different movies add different things to it. Like you said, one of them turned it into a knife. Like what? Like do we put that into the stat block? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, I hopefully that was interesting to people who haven't seen the Hellraiser series. Hopefully it felt accurate to people who have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't often bring in items that I came up with myself. So I don't know. I guess I'm self-conscious about this one. Stop looking at me.
Gabe, I can't see you.
Good. All right. So I think that'll do it for the Dragon's Horde today. Thank you, Gabe, for bringing in magic item.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe.
Jeff, if anybody else wanted to be like me and they wanted to submit magic items for the Dragon's Horde, or questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre or retirement village, how would they get those to us?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com or join us on our Interparty Discord at bit.ly/interpartydiscord.
That is correct. And before we go any further, we have a couple giveaways to give away today.
Mm-hmm.
Our first giveaway is Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2, courtesy of Crit Academy. Crit Academy is a great podcast where every episode they have a character concept, an encounter concept, a monster variant, a magic item, a player tip, and a DM tip. And then this supplement is their second compilation of 25 of those. So 25 of each of those. There's tons of content in here. Stuff for players, stuff for DMs, stuff for people just interested in reading about the game. All sorts of cool stuff. It's a great supplement. So who is the winner of this great supplement today?
Today's winner is Travis B.
Whoa, winner. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Yes, congratulations, Travis, or TB, I think they put in the actual email. So congratulations. You should be getting that in your email pretty soon. If you haven't gotten it in a few days, let me know. Be sure to leave Crit Academy a review. The more reviews they have, the better attention they get, the better they can make their future products and so on. So yeah, big thank you to Crit Academy for facilitating this. Good job to Travis. Jeff, if anybody else wanted to be like TB here and win a copy of this free supplement, how would they do so?
They would send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com with Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2 in the subject line.
Yes, be sure to put Volume 2 in there or I'll put it in the wrong folder. And then we have our final giveaway of Strahd's Manual of Shadow, courtesy of Seawood Scribe. Strahd's Manual of Shadow is likewise a great supplement. This one is all kind of horror-themed stuff. It's got character options, it's got spells, it's got magic items, it's got monsters, it's got all sorts of cool stuff. There's like 200 pages worth of content in this thing. Tons and tons of stuff. So we've given away one copy each week in October, and this is the final one. So Jeff, who is the final winner of Strahd's Manual of Shadow this October?
Our final winner is Jason P.
Whoa, winner! Yes, congratulations, Jason P. You should also be getting that in your email pretty soon, within the next few days. Good job. Thank you, Seawood Scribe. Jason, be sure to leave Seawood Scribe a review. Like I said, with Crit Academy, the more reviews they get, the more attention that product will get, and also the more they can put those, comments and criticisms towards making better products in the future. So huge thank you to Crit Academy. Huge thank you to Seawood Scribe. Good job to Travis and Jason. Unfortunately, we won't be giving away any more copies of Strahd's Manual of Shadow, but the link will be in the show notes if you would like to purchase a copy of your own.
Yep, still going to be up on the Dungeon Masters Guild, and
yes,
it's a lot of good content in there.
Yeah, really good product there. So check that out. And then I want to thank all of our wonderful patrons. We have a Patreon campaign at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. For anyone not familiar, Patreon's an online platform. You can pledge to donate to us or the creator of your choice. We've got some different tiers with different rewards on there. We've got outtakes. We've got fantasy fiction that I've written. We've got a monthly bonus podcast. We've got a monthly Roll20 game. So lots of cool stuff on there. We've got a great group of people that have continued to donate to us through these difficult times. We know times are tough. We would understand if anybody had to cancel or reduce their pledge, but huge thank you to everybody who has not. You guys are awesome. You keep the lights on, and yeah, you guys rock. So if anybody else would like to join those people and help support us monetarily, we're at patreon.com/InterPartyConflict. And then one more thing, check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Check out Crit Academy. I already mentioned them. They are at critacademy.com. Check out Brute Force and Ignorance. They are an actual play podcast. And check out D&D Character Lab. Garen and Dan made characters and pitted them against each other to debate whose characters were better. Enough with all the admin. Let's get into some questions. Some spooky questions.
Spooky whoosh. Our first question comes from Adam B. on Discord, and they ask, what are the different subgenres of horror, and how do I incorporate them into games?
Yes. So as we tend to do on Halloween, we've got a question or two that has to do with horror and such. So for this one, Adam was asking, what are the different subgenres and how do you make them, how do you make that part of your game? Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are probably different definitions of the subgenres of horror, but according to Wikipedia, at least, the subgenres are comedy horror, folk horror, mm-hmm. found footage horror,
okay,
gothic horror, natural horror, slasher horror, and teen horror. So we can try. I don't know if we'll have a good answer for really even half of it. I mean, maybe we'll have one for a few of these. But if we can think of anything for each of these, we'll kind of just go down the list and see if we can come up with anything for a way to incorporate one of these into your game.
Sorry. I think one of them, like the found footage one, that would be like your Blair Witch kind of thing.
Yeah. So those are the ones where the medium itself is kind of part of the horror. Mm-hmm. The idea isn't that you're watching a professionally produced film. It's like this is an actual video somebody recorded, so it feels more real because it's like oh, this is actual evidence that this is a real thing.
Your paranormal activities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm just playing that Phasmaphobia game, like trying to do something like that in a D&D campaign where you are going into a haunted house and trying to exorcise a demon or something like that, but like by more like classical means rather than like D&D means. So like,
sure,
you might have to come up with some new mechanics for that kind of stuff. You can use magical spells in order to divination spells to try and, find out what kind of spirit you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. What's the game system? It's like the Buffy the Vampire. It's not the Buffy the Vampire Slayer system, but it's like it where it's like it's Monster of the Week kind of thing. Is that what it's called?
I think it's called Monster of the Week. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I feel like that kind of falls into. I don't know exactly which genre that would fall into, but like where you are just kind of like, you're kind of like a ghost hunter or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like that could be kind of fun, like an adventure set around a haunted dungeon or mansion or something.
Sure. I'm trying to think of how you would best translate the found footage element into a game. Cause I mean, like, you can't really. I mean, it's a totally different medium, so
mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's not really going to work. But I was thinking, like, if you were to play a modern game and set it in a real location, preferably a location that the players are familiar with, and maybe had the players play themselves,
okay,
or something, maybe that, because the idea, is you're trying to get them to feel more like this is a real thing. Mm-hmm. Or maybe like if you could incorporate like calling someone on their phone during the game, like when they talk to an NPC, you call them and you talk to them on the phone or something.
Right. Yeah. You
I don't know.
You give them all
probably
sending stones in the game, but then you use their actual cell phones as like a prop for the sending stone or something.
Sure. I don't know. It would probably always end up feeling weird and silly, but
yeah,
I don't know.
If
you could do something like that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if that's everybody goes in there knowing that's what's going to happen, like you could set up. I mean, you always a lot of people who don't know people who play D&D might picture them in a dark basement with candles lit and stuff like that.
Sure.
But like you could set it up like a seance kind of thing, and like, but you're gonna play D&D or something similar, and like the theme is horror, ghost hunting or whatever, and you can set the mood for it so that you're like, okay, yeah, everybody have their cell phones out. That is your sending stone. You might get a message from beyond the grave or something.
Yeah.
You're definitely introducing, different mechanics from other games. Cause like there are some games, that kind of deal with that. I'm trying to think of like, the game Werewolf, or maybe sometimes kind of like Mafia or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Are you familiar with Among Us at this point?
I still haven't played it, but I know how it works.
Yeah, and like again, it's not the first of its kind. Like there's many games like it where like there's an imposter or a killer, and like people have to figure out who that is by kind of like, it's more a process of elimination kind of, where like at the the round starts and nobody knows what's going on, and then the round ends and somebody's dead, and you have to go around asking questions or something. You have to like ask people questions or kind of try to like, somebody might know who it is, but they could be lying, but they could be lying, and that could be the person who's the killer. So it's one of those whodunit kind of things, and I'm sure you could find a way to put that into a D&D game.
Yeah. I feel like if there were some way to turn D&D into, if you were able to put in the work to make it into like an augmented reality type thing, where like, there's like, I don't know, QR codes around the house or something, and if they scan one, it gives them a clue into the game or something. I think if you were willing to put in the work for something like that, it could be really cool to make the game feel more like it was part of the real world, in keeping with the found footage type thing,
Yeah.
I was concerned that'd be the one that we couldn't find anything to do with, but I think these are some neat ideas we've come up with.
Yeah.
So like, let's look at like comedy horror. Okay. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. You just kind of make a horror game, but possibly have elements of, absurdity and such. Have the killer, instead of just being like a demon or something, have them be like a giant ice cream cone demon or something. I don't know. Something that like is so absurd that of course it's silly.
Right. Yeah. Your calzone golems and whatnot.
Oh man, a calzone golem. That's 100%.
That's a classic.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So, horror that is either built on comedy or comedy that is, lends itself more to like black comedy, like the darker side and such. It's really kind of simple. Just put some comedy in your horror, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking of like your Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
The other one from those people that isn't the one that you saw in theater by accident. Was it At World's End? And then there's
The World's End and Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz is more of an action movie. The World's End is more
what's the one that's got like Michael Cera and isn't the World's End?
This Is the End. Yes.
Yeah, This Is the End. Which I guess that would fall into the horror comedy, I guess,
I guess, yeah.
Zombieland.
Yeah.
Where it's more campy. It's like, it's still horror themed, but it's more campy, goofy kind of a thing.
More like self-aware and such.
Yeah. Which I feel like that's super easily achieved, because like a lot of like, with all the in-jokes and stuff that people have at their game tables, that's usually where it ends up getting to anyway. Like, you might be in a serious situation where you're fighting a, big bad evil guy saving the world, but then you're goofing around in between takes, like, so I feel like that one will come more naturally, like a comedy horror, because you just do horror, but then have all your friends do, in jokes the whole time.
Yeah. To be perfectly honest, I imagine most people's horror games are comedy horror by default, just because, it's when there's tension, a lot of people break up the tension by, making jokes and such. And also I think it's more comfortable to inject some humor into a game. So, yeah. Yeah. So comedy horror is probably a pretty self-explanatory one. Folk horror is another one. On Wikipedia, it describes it as folk horror typically includes a rural setting and themes of isolation, religion, the power of nature, and the potential darkness of rural landscapes. So movies like The Wicker Man, The Witch, and Midsummer.
Okay. When I was hearing folk, I'm thinking like folk tale, like just general stuff like werewolves and vampires and stuff.
Yeah, this one is going to be largely based on like the setting that it takes place in. You can run a horror game that takes place in a city and then run that same horror game and have it take place out in the woods or something, and it's going to feel different in almost every case just because the setting is different. So, isolation, a really big part of that. If you want to make the players feel isolated, just have whatever happens to them happen far away from a settlement of any kind. The power of nature is that's a really big part of that, or just like tradition and such. I know it says religion, but so much of D&D already incorporates religion as by default, I feel. So having it be more like tradition based, even if the players do find a settlement and the horror happens there, they can find out that the horror that's happening is part of these people's traditions. It's like, oh, they're all cannibals because for thousands of years that's just how they've done it. And so this is all just part of their tradition. And as a result, their tradition doesn't blend well with, the city folk or whoever the players are.
Yeah. We're not the weird ones. They're the weird ones for
sure.
Living like sheeple. We're the ones killing each other like civilized folk.
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with Gothic horror. I guess I would recognize it if I saw it. The description on Wikipedia just kind of says it incorporates elements of Gothic literature.
Okay.
It does say including romance, dread, and the supernatural. But like again, that doesn't really narrow it down much.
Like what does that mean? Like,
I don't know.
Gothic horror. It's just a lot of like cast iron fences. I don't know.
I guess, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, like games like Bloodborne and such.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's more just like a setting than a...
Yeah. I feel like there's more to it than the setting, but I don't know enough about it to be able to say exactly what makes something Gothic horror.
Yeah, Gothic horror. I feel maybe the vampire stuff falls closer to that than...
Maybe.
Like folk horror is more like hags, ghouls, and werewolves, whereas Gothic horror is more your Draculas and I don't know,
Draculas and cults of nobles,
and
such,
and your Addams families.
Okay, yeah.
Your family's Addams.
Your family's Addams, yes. Maybe have if you were to run a game that could be a folk horror if you put it out in the woods, if you put it in like a city, maybe it would be closer to Gothic horror.
Yeah,
maybe.
So yeah, maybe that is more just like a setting than anything else.
Yeah. Natural horror, I think, is probably going to be a pretty easy one. So natural horror is the subgenre of horror films featuring nature running amok in the form of mutated beasts, carnivorous insects, and normally harmless animals or plants turned into cold-blooded killers.
Okay. So you're dipping into more like sci-fi, like classical sci-fi horrors.
Possibly, yeah. This actually just made me realize I'm surprised that body horror isn't on here. I mean, I guess a movie isn't really like body horror the genre. But body horror is a type of horror.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can have scenes of body horror, but I think that has more to just to do with like Or that's more to do with like maybe like censorships and stuff like that. It's like, you know, having a movie that is completely body horror, that's like, people are like, okay, this is a snuff film at this point, you know, and that's more of a,
Sure.
You know, people might just not be into that. Like, you might have a body horror scene here and there just to get the thrills going and like kind of get everybody nice and squeamish. But if you're going to, devote an entire movie to that, then I feel like a lot of people's sensibilities might not go for that.
So I just brought up a different Wikipedia page on body horror to get a good definition of it. It says body horror is a subgenre of horror that intentionally showcases graphic or psychologically disturbing violations of the human body. And I'll actually insert not just the human body, but like any kind of natural body, I guess. So like animals too.
Yeah.
These violations may manifest through aberrant sex, mutations, mutilation, zombification, gratuitous violence, disease, or unnatural movements of the body. So, because I brought this up because the other, the definition of natural horror included like normally harmless animals or plants turned into killers and such. And I'm thinking like the movie Annihilation.
Oh, yeah.
I would say is very much body horror because it involves these people go into this weird supernatural area where nature has kind of started running amok, and then all of the creatures that they encounter have mutated in some incredibly bizarre way.
Yeah.
So there's like an alligator, I think, that has like 10 rows of teeth where it should only have one.
Right.
There's like a bear that...
Oh, God, that bear.
Like when it roars, it lets out a sound that sounds like a person screaming.
Yeah, that is one of the more terrifying scenes I've seen in a movie. Like it was just very disturbing.
So like when I'm thinking of natural horror, I'm thinking of like, animals that have been like partially mutated into being part plant or something like that. Just total nature run amok, that sort of thing. And that dips into body horror in my mind.
What, like The Happening? Is that what that movie's called?
Yeah, The Happening. I don't really think there was much
happening in that movie.
I was going to say, I don't think there was much body horror, but I think you were just referring to the natural horror.
The natural horror, yeah.
Yeah. The Happening is a good example.
Was it the tree? I don't, you know what? I have no idea.
It was plants are releasing some sort of a pollen that makes people kill themselves, I guess.
I guess. But then it stops suddenly because somebody thought about it. I don't know.
I guess. So the next up is slasher horror. Slasher horror is a horror subgenre which involves a killer murdering a group of people, usually by use of bladed tools. Okay.
Freddy, Jason,
Michael Myers. The examples they give are Sleepaway Camp, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Lake Bottom. I don't not familiar with that last one, but
Scream.
Scream, yeah. So like I would say some examples of how to use this in a game. You want your killer to feel at the same time completely mortal, but also unstoppable.
Right.
If you feel like the killer is some sort of supernatural being that feels less like a slasher and more like, I don't know, something else, I guess. But like, in the Scream movies, for example, the characters are always trying to get away. They're never trying to fight back. So it'll be hard to quite get that in your D&D game. If you were to try and use this in a role-playing game, one thing you would probably want to do is make sure that the players feel very weak at any moment. If they feel like they can just fight back, it's not really going to work as a slasher. But if they feel weak, if they feel like their best option is to run away, then that's going to lead towards feeling like a slasher, I think. I feel like I really like the slasher genre. It can be real bad. Most of the time it is, but whenever there's like a good slasher, I think it's a lot of fun.
I feel like they're the easier ones to pick apart because the idea is that like the villain is sort of just some guy with a knife, but then always seems to be 12 steps ahead of everybody, no matter what. Like, you can drive away in a car, but somehow it ends up in front of you in the road. And it's like, how is that a thing?
Like, Michael Myers literally never runs in the entire Halloween series.
Right.
Yet
but
he's always right behind you.
He's always just there.
Yeah.
He just walks really fast. He's a speed runner.
Yeah.
Speed walker.
I will say that in Film Reroll, they did the first Halloween movie. They did Friday the 13th Part 4. They also did a sequel to their version of the first Halloween movie. Like they didn't do, it wasn't Halloween 2, but they did a sequel to the one that they did, which ended quite differently than the first Halloween movie. But from what I've gathered from that, when they did Halloween, Paolo, the GM, he did have Michael Myers essentially be immortal, like be invincible. But if he sustained any sort of a weakness, he had different rolls that he would make to determine how long it took him to get up and start following the PCs again. So, if they do enough damage to him, they could get away theoretically. But, it's just a matter of delaying the bad guy rather than killing the bad guy. We mentioned Dead by Daylight. That's a game you and I both like, Jeff. And that is a game that I think is pretty unique in that you cannot fight back against the killer. The best you can do is delay them so that you can escape.
Right.
So if you can get some sort of sense like that into your game, that's probably going to make it feel like a slasher in some way. And then the last one that Wikipedia has is teen horror. Teen horror is a horror subgenre that victimizes teenagers while usually promoting strong anti-conformity teenage leads appealing to young generations. This subgenre often depicts themes of sex, underage drinking, and gore. It was most popular in 1964 and 1965. What? Since when? Anyway, so I mean that one's pretty simple. I assumed that this was something I was familiar with, but it says it was most popular in the 60s. What have I been watching then, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know.
So I don't know. I guess just put teens in your game. Do stuff that teens would do.
Right.
If you were doing something that was sort of augmented reality or had the players playing themselves, whether the players are teens or not, I think that could lend itself well to this type of game. Just what sort of stuff do teens do? Put that in your game, I guess.
Drinking and drugs, I guess.
Yeah. One thing that I will say, so we, for our Patreon game this October, we're going to be using a game the game system is called Scream, SCREAM, and I think those are your stats, like strength, constitution, whatever. But one thing that I really like about this game's system is that you can get these points in order to like make your rolls better. And the way that you get those, it's called hope. The way that you get hope is by doing stupid things. Like in a movie when someone is like, oh, let me go walk into this room with the lights off and ask if anybody's there. You get a hope point. And, if you say, oh, I'll be right back, because everybody knows when you say I'll be right back, you're not going to be right back.
Let's split up, gang.
Exactly. You get points for splitting up, and then you can use those points to further your roles and further the game. So I think that's definitely a hallmark of like slashers, hallmark of teen horror, the little tropes that everybody is like, no, why would you do that? Why would anybody do that? Those are the types of things. So here's just like a suggestion to anybody any players who are going to be playing in a horror game. Do some stupid stuff. The game is going to be so much more fun if you're not like constantly on edge, holding your weapon, ready to attack anything that's there.
Yeah.
If you're like, yeah, it'd be really stupid for somebody to go and, climb under this car and grab those keys or whatever. Yeah, I'll go ahead and climb under the car. I'll take my field of vision away from where the killer was a moment ago. Do it. Have some fun.
Yeah, don't metagame just because it's a horror game and what happens when people split up and stuff. Like
exactly.
It'll be more fun if you play along, but also try to get creative though.
Right.
Like don't just be like, no, we're not going to split up. We're all going to stay together. Okay, then we all stick together, and then And then the DM's got to come up with some way to make that fun, even though it's going to be, it just won't be as fun.
Like, could you imagine a movie where all the protagonists just like stand in the middle of a room, all facing in opposite directions, watching all the doors and windows
with loaded guns,
waiting for the cops to arrive?
Yeah, it's like
that they called on the phone they brought.
Right, immediately, like the first sign of trouble, they were like, yes, we are calling the police. Okay, I agree. All right, fine, let's do that. Hello, police? Yes, we might be in trouble. All right, you want us to stay put? We'll do just that.
Right.
Roll credits. Like, you're playing a game. Don't do that. That's have fun.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think horror is so much fun, and so you should play into it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Our next question comes from Stiltskin Kupo 84 on Discord, and they ask, not all players like horror. Is it possible to run or play a horror game while still catering to those that dislike horror?
Yeah, so kind of going with what I just said, players should play along with the horror. If someone doesn't like horror, I feel like it is going to be kind of hard to cater to a dislike for horror while still running a horror game. I mean, I guess it depends on how intense or how horrifying the game is meant to be. I guess maybe the DM can dial some stuff back.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess think of it like if the group is going to be playing like an aquatic campaign and one of the players is like, I really don't like anything aquatic. I would rather play a game that was like on land in a city, going into dungeons and stuff. Like that's kind of a difference in expectation, and I don't really know how well it's going to go if you can't reconcile those.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, some allowances can be made on either side, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, if you're going to be playing in a horror game, you should be expecting horror. If you don't like horror, maybe you should sit that one out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of tough because, like, if there's an adventure coming up that's like, yep, there's a thing at the bottom of a lake, you got to go get it, kind of deal. And it's like, well, and that player just doesn't like water-based adventures. Like, what can you do? Like,
yeah,
it's that's not an easy thing. It's like, do you ask them to just sit it out, or do you have them go on their own little side adventure, which again takes its own extra bit of work? And like I feel like, at least to the player, you got to be more open-minded. Like, it maybe it's just for one adventure. It might just be for one adventure. Like, just kind of go with it. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. If you don't, whatever. At the very least, you didn't split the group,
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we've always said, like, if a group isn't the right fit for you, sometimes you just got to leave. But
yeah,
if it's going to just be for this one adventure, like, because I think we've talked about before where, like, some people don't like the Halloween episodes of shows, like, of
what the heck,
shows
people?
and podcasts and stuff like that.
Go on.
They skip them because it's like, well, it's a Halloween episode. That's just not what I'm into. So I'll come back next week when they're not talking about Halloween crap.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, I get it. That's fine. It's not for you. But with a D&D party, it's not unheard of for somebody to sit out an adventure. So I guess you could just sit that one out.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks to suggest that.
Yeah.
But if the alternative is you're not going to have a good time, and or the whole rest of the group is either not going to have a good time or is going to have to put in extra work to make up for, for your lack of a good time. Right.
Yeah. And or if they take a more active approach where they're like actively sabotaging the theme, they're like,
yeah.
It's like, we're like, okay, let's go into the water. They're like, no, we're going to go this way first. Or like, just trying to, like, the player trying to lead the entire group in an opposite direction of where they know they're supposed to go. But because that player is stubborn and doesn't want to do the water or horror adventure,
yeah,
they just refuse to and like kind of bring everything to a standstill.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Stiltskin Hoopo 84 also elaborated that he doesn't really like zombies.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in a game that had a lot of zombies or something like that. And so if you were playing in a game and you really didn't like zombies, or possibly, because another thing that comes to mind is like if you have arachnophobia and you're in a game and suddenly the DM says, "Oh yeah," and then a giant swarm of spiders comes at you. I could understand someone being like, "Oh, I'm out. I'm gonna go home. I'm not gonna play this game."
Yeah,
and not in a bad way. Just like, hey, everybody has things that if something triggers you, if something has something, if there is a triggering element in a game that you're not going to be able to work with, it makes sense for you to just kind of step out.
Yeah,
not necessarily to tell the rest of the group, no, you can't play a game that has spiders or zombies in it, but if you know that you don't like this type of game, it might be best just to, just sit on the sidelines or come back when they're done with that and go on and do something else.
Yeah. I think that should be one of those like communicate at the beginning kind of things. Like if you're the player that like even just the mention of giant spiders, even though it's D&D and like the worst you're going to see is an illustration of a spider or a miniature of a spider. But if you can't handle that,
sure,
let the DM know right ahead. Like, it's like, hey, like I have a deathly fear of spiders. I just cannot handle it. Please don't put any spiders. Like super serious, don't put spiders. Then as long as they're not a horrible person, they'll go, oh, okay, fair enough. Like, can do. Like, it's not far off of like when everybody chips in for pizza, somebody says, hey, I'm allergic to mushrooms, like, and so everybody then agrees, okay, we just won't get mushrooms. No big deil. Like,
I think that's a pretty good comparison.
But I mean, like, there is a thing of like, you don't want to be the scaredy cat. It's like, like, because not everybody's going to understand what it's like to be that afraid of something.
Sure.
And like, spiders make me jump. Like, I audibly scream when I see spiders sometimes. Like if it's a big spider and I wasn't expecting it, I will just like die, like.
Yeah. Same here.
And, once I see it and I know it's not immediately coming for me, I'm like, oh, okay. Hey there, buddy. See you later. Like leave me alone, please. And then I'm done. But there are plenty of people who like just the very thought that spider is in a 60-foot radius of it, they cannot function. They just can't. Sure. And it's just a biological trigger that they have, and there's nothing they can do about it. There's really not like short of like long-term therapy or something like that, but that's their business, like.
Yeah. So. And no, you shouldn't be expected to have to do anything. You shouldn't have to be expected to like change something like that about yourself just to play in a D&D game.
Right. Whatever. So yeah, some things, sometimes you got to make some compromises for other people like that. But so like, yeah, if just like body horror kind of stuff, like, like I can understand being squeamish of that and like being like, I can't get behind it one way or another, whether it's whether it is just like a squeamish thing or just it goes against everything I am as a person to hurt someone like in those kind of ways. Like, like self-defense against a monster with a sword is one thing, but like, mutilating bodies is a completely different monster.
Sure.
So like if you're just really not into that, you can be like, hey, I cannot deal with this sort of thing. Can we do it a different way? Can we go about this a little bit different? Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess just to as a quick answer to the question, it's possible, but it's not going to be fun. I feel like it's if the game is horror at its core, then it's not going to be fun for anybody if the players are not if all the players are not on board for the horror. So
yeah, so just if you have a plan, if you have an idea for a horror genre adventure, bring it up before you put the work in.
Yes,
like let everybody at the party know, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this horror thing. It's gonna have these kind of elements in it. Is everybody okay with that? And if anybody raises any objections, then to work from there.
Yeah, and of course, discuss something like this at session 0. It's a good a good thing to bring up, just if there is, whether it's you don't like horror, you don't like spiders, don't like zombies, anything like that. Be sure to bring it up. If there's anything that might come up later on that you might make you want to leave the group or even sit out for a session, bring it up.
Yeah, Gabe, I've been meaning to tell you I am deathly afraid of dragons and piles of gold.
Oh, Jeff, you just got turned into a pile of gold by a dragon.
No! Oh, worst nightmare.
Yep.
I am the dragon's horde. No!
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for our regular questions for today. But we do still have our spooky social media questions, or at least one of them is spooky, not the other. So the first one, our last social media question was, have you ever played in a game that featured a sport or in-character game that used its own set of rules or minigame mechanics? Because as we know, sports are scary.
Terrifying.
Have you ever played in such a game, Jeff?
I can't remember if I said anything beyond like it was like a gladiatory arena sort of thing, but we've made many references to Goat Ball. So.
Yes, yeah, that is definitely what prompted this question.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did like I had some carnival games and like drinking games set up for the Flood Festival and such.
But more like traditional like physical sports that involve like scores and balls and
and
like
anything.
Not much in that way, but
sure. We got a few responses over on Facebook. Sean M says, I'd love suggestions. One I made was a bar game of arm wrestling. Wagers placed, contested checks of strength by each competitor that functioned sort of similar to death saves. As DM, I tracked a neutral score and a winning competitor would get a point while the loser lost a point. Criticals counted as an extra point as appropriate to 1 or 20. First to 3 points wins. I had the player play it out with me on the table to visualize the points without needing to use the mechanical numbers. And yeah, that's pretty good. I think I did something similar when we did our the drinking contest for the Shackled City.
Yeah,
I think it was basically like well, I guess it was sort of similar. It was like competing Constitution saves, or something. So yeah, those were good from Sean M. Nathan H says, I've occasionally played Three Dragon Ante for D&D and Sabak for my Star Wars game back in middle school. I'm not sure what Sabak is. It generally felt like a distraction from the main game, so I haven't figured out how to manage it well yet. Anticipate becoming a whole session. I might try it again if the party is deep into roleplay and needs to interact with a powerful crime lord, noble, etc.
I think Sabak is in Knights of the Old Republic. I think they use that in that game.
Jason E., who actually was a person who posed this question in the first place, he said, we once played a game of Blood Pig, a game created by a madman who had taken over a part of the city during a riot fueled by a pandemic. In order to get an audience with the self-proclaimed emperor, the party had to beat his chosen champions in Blood Pig. In the game, each team has a goal area at either end of the field. The goal is a pit with a rabid wolverine inside. A live pig is dropped in the middle of the field, and teams have to use whatever means necessary to get the pig into their goal where the wolverine will eat it. No weapons or armor are allowed, but everything is fair game. We used grapple rules, bull rush rules, and pig tossing rules using Goat Ball AC. Even better, I brought back some rival NPCs from earlier in the campaign as the Emperor's champions, so the game became really personal and bloody. It was ridiculous and fun.
Blood Pig.
Yeah, that sounds. That's exactly what I was looking for. That sounds awesome. Over on Reddit, Alstar the Minotaur says, I had my players play in a game of Battleship where they were each in charge of a vessel that they operated the cannon for. The wrench in the game was that there was a kraken that would attack once per turn, and they would have to ward it off with one of their attacks, wasting that player's round, or alternatively, get attacked by the kraken and lose a slot on their ship. If one of the ships were sunk, they had to do a skill challenge to get their ally's ship and climb aboard. Depending on how many squares away they were from the nearest ship, it would change the difficulty of the challenge. So yeah, I think that's an interesting way to do it. It's half battleship, half skill challenges.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, we did not get any on Twitter, and on Discord, E. Thompson 03 says, no, and I hope I never have to. I can't imagine that being any fun. And if I want to experience really bad fantasy-based sports, I'll rewatch The Phantom Menace again.
Oh, gosh.
All right. Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Stiltskin Kubo 84 says, once my DM Jim had us do actual gladiatorial series. We got seeded because we were unknowns. We took the championship in, I think, 1 or 2 victories. Those of our party who didn't fight stayed in the stands and placed bets. Once we engaged in a game of Red Dragon Inn to simulate a betting game in a local tavern. Also, Og notoriously won a drinking game by drinking a dwarf, an elf, and a Goliath under the table in their native ales, with opposed con checks. And after he was the last drinker conscious, he was challenged double or nothing by the house to take 3 steps with the prize money, which he did, and then immediately fell. 3 saves and a perfectly timed fail. The group had to carry Og and the double winnings back to the inn. As Og was over 600 pounds, they both were and weren't happy about it. Yeah, there you go. Autumn Wind says, yes, I participated in the dinosaur races in Chult. My paladin won handily by riding his steed, Chuckles, whose form was that of a dinosaur rather than riding an actual dinosaur. Also, we have gambled in-game. The race was the best one, though, and the party made us lots of money by betting on me. And then just one more. Zadig69 says, yeah, the WFF. It's exactly what you think it is. World Fighting Federation. They were just ridiculous matches with fun improvised weapons like tables, ladders, and chairs.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, and that was our last social media question. Our next social media question is, in your opinion, what is the scariest D&D monster?
Scariest D&D monster.
I feel like we did a question similar to this, but I couldn't find one anywhere.
Yeah.
So if we did, we're doing it again.
I know there was that one from Volo's Guide that's like, I forget what it is. It makes a copy of other people or something. Like it steals their soul or something. I can't remember.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not familiar with that.
I think it's like a type of ooze maybe that like mimics people. Or no. I'm sorry. No, it's a Mordenkainen's. My bad.
Oh, okay. Do you know what it's called?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I mean, that sounds horrifying. So it's like an ooze that like makes a copy of someone.
Yeah. Like it mimics them, and I feel like it like mimics them perfectly, except for the fact that they're like connected by these weird strands.
Oh, that does sound familiar, actually. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see if I can find that and put it in the show notes or something.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. When it comes to being scary, like, you know, big strong monsters aren't really scary to me. I'm sure if I were in the world, I guess they would be, but
right.
Like it's stuff like that. It's stuff like that. Or even like the idea of a doppelganger is kind of terrifying. I've read stories online of people who like encountered someone that looked and acted just like them in real bizarre situations. And those sorts of stories are like so terrifying to read because it's like, what if there was someone out there that looked and acted like you and they decided to take your place and there was nothing you could do about it?
Yeah. The Elder Oblex.
Okay.
Yeah, they eat memories, and
boy.
they can impersonate the people whose memories they've eaten and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay, that does sound familiar.
It is a type of ooze.
Sure.
Yeah, I think oozes in general, I think, are like, they're my least. I think they'd be among my like the creepiest for me would be oozes, because like, you know, you're walking down a hallway and you get stuck in an ooze and then you're just kind of like screwed and dissolving slowly, and you're like, okay, this is the worst way to go. Yeah. Or like bone ooze. It's like, well, okay, now I'm just a ball of pudding.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah. I would say probably the scariest thing is just like anything that that their main thing is like taking over your mind. Mind flayers are pretty scary for that reason. Like they just kind of lock you down mentally. Yep. And then they eat your brain.
Yep. No, but that's delicious. It's
I wouldn't know. Yeah. So I'm I'll see if I can come up with a better answer before next time, but I'll see if anybody has any good responses to that. So yeah, what is the scariest D&D monster? All right, and that'll do it for our questions for today. Before we close out, though, let's wind down. Let's. Well, did you just hear that, Jeff? I just heard something off in the distance.
What was that?
It's probably nothing. We'll just relax here. Relax here by this nice fire here. Let's remember those who have. I just heard it again.
Well, what are you talking about, Gabe?
I don't know. Sorry. Anyway, let's remember those who have made the world a better place as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. I wish I could have found like a good horror themed funeral pyre. I wasn't really able to find one. But anyway, today's funeral pyre was submitted by AJ Steeb via email. And they said, I play D&D with my brothers. We played a short campaign which was called the Demon Hunters campaign. It was just 3 of us playing. I made a Warforged character named M237. I put them in the class of Battlemaster Fighter. It was created by a dwarf that designed Warforged for battle and combat purposes. M237 had 2 arms that split into 4 at will. My Warforged was given a nickname Clanky by its teammate Warrander, a white Abishai, M237's teammate and good friend. As M237 and Warrander were in a tower going through traps and puzzles floor by floor, making their way up the tower, fighting off cultists and the headmistress of Grast, and eventually defeated the demon lord Grast of the Forgotten Realms by destroying a big crystal that made it possible for him to appear in the mortal realm. As we destroyed the crystal, it began to make a warping sound, indicating it was about to explode. Warrander grabbed M237 that had taken some beating and jumped out of the window of the top floor, leaving behind M237's trusty pet Cluck and Chuck, a cockatrice that was disguised as a chicken with crazy eyes. M237 and Warrander fell out of the window as Warrander carried my character, making a rough landing. The impact caused M237 to fall apart into pieces, with wires, gears, and machinery showing. As Warrander held M237 in his arms, the light in my character's eyes flickered and faded. As the Warforged crystal core slowly faded from what was once lit with energy, turned dark and lifeless as my character slowly died.
No.
Warrander picked up all the pieces and stuffed it into his bag of holding, hoping one day that M237 would be fixed by returning it to its creator. Will M237 live once more? We may never know.
Aw.
Clink. All right, that'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the funeral pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. You can join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict. We're on Reddit. We're on our Interparty Discord, and we're on Twitter @InPartyConflict. Check those out for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show monetarily, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. We have a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is a YouTube channel where you can watch us play video games. There is also a Twitch channel, so twitch.tv/FriendQuestLive, where we will be doing the Extra Life 2020 fundraiser. That will be happening on November 7th, sometime probably starting in the morning.
Yes.
It officially starts at 8 a.m., but I'm not sure if I'll get started that early.
Gotcha.
But we'll just be streaming some games, having some fun, and collecting donations to help children's hospitals.
Awesome. If you'd like to head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict, you can take a short survey about our show. What you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games, courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time...
Boo!
Ah!